All right, strap yourselves in because we are going deep on the League of Legends patch notes 2025.S1.3. This is not just about number tweaks. We are uncovering the philosophy behind these changes. What is Riot thinking about the future of the game?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to see how these notes offer a glimpse into the developer's long-term vision, especially when we look at the changes to attack speed.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. They're raising the attack speed cap. Seems like a pretty major shift. What's the thinking behind that?
It's a fascinating move. Over time, champion abilities have become more powerful, but auto attacks haven't kept pace. This change keeps them relevant even in the late game, ensures a balance of power between abilities and basic attacks.
So does this mean we might see a resurgence of attack speed-focused builds? I'm already imagining like the Jax of lightning-fast punches just becoming a nightmare to deal with.
Absolutely. Certain champions like Jax and Quinn are likely to benefit greatly from this change. But it's not just about individual champions. It's about how this impacts team compositions and strategies as a whole. Could we see a shift towards more sustained damage teamfights?
Interesting. And what about the changes to champion bounties? It seems like they're continuing their efforts to discourage those, you know, lone wolf carry situations.
Exactly. This patch further reduces bounties on champions from losing teams, especially if they're the only ones ahead, encourages more strategic team play, and makes comebacks more feasible. Instead of relying on a single fed player, teams need to work together to overcome a deficit.
Do you think this will make for more exciting back-and-forth matches, or will it make snowballing even harder to counter?
It's a delicate balance. On one hand, it promotes more team-oriented play and reduces the frustration of feeling helpless against a single overpowered opponent. But on the other hand, it could make it more challenging to turn the tide of the game. If your team falls behind early, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in practice.
Now let's talk about the Epic Monster shakeup. They seem to be playing a balancing act with some key objectives.
They're definitely trying to keep things fresh. We're seeing nerfs to Void Grubs, Voracious Atacon, and even the Cloud Soul, which was a pretty popular pick. But on the flip side, the Chemtech Soul is getting a power boost.
So they're tweaking the risk-reward balance of each objective. What are the specific changes to Atacon that stood out to you?
They've reduced the bonus gold you get from taking him down
Hmm.
and increased the stasis duration after his false life withdrawal. So, while he might be less lucrative, he's also more dangerous to engage. This forces players to think strategically about when and how to take him on.
It seems like they're pushing players to be more deliberate in their decision-making. And what about the Cloud Soul nerf? That movement speed bonus was incredibly potent.
It was a bit too strong, yeah. Making it feel like an automatic win condition for some teams. Reducing the movement speed bonus makes it less dominant while still keeping it a valuable objective.
So the Cloud Soul is no longer the undisputed king. Does this open the door for the Chemtech Soul to become the new hot pick?
Potentially. The increased damage boost and damage reduction it provides when you're below 50% health could make it a powerful tool for aggressive teams who thrive on skirmishes. It definitely shakes things up, adds another layer of strategic depth to objective control.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about Swiftplay. The updates here seem laser-focused on keeping the action fast and furious.
Exactly. From faster minion scaling to a brand new sudden death mechanic, these changes are all about preventing those marathon matches. That can sometimes happen in Swiftplay. Minion health and damage will scale more aggressively, pushing games towards a quicker conclusion.
And what about the sudden death mechanic? It seems pretty intense.
It definitely adds a layer of urgency. If a game goes past the 25-minute mark, turrets start losing resistances, and at 30 minutes, sudden death kicks in. Structures rapidly lose health until one team's nexus explodes.
No more epic 40-minute slugfests, huh? Do you think this will lead to even more aggressive early gameplays? Or will teams try to stall and outmaneuver each other until sudden death?
It's hard to say for sure, but I anticipate a lot of experimentation and adaptation. As players figure out the optimal strategies for this new, faster-paced environment, this could lead to some incredibly exciting and unpredictable matches.
Now, I'm always eager to hear about champion changes. Who are some of the winners and losers in this patch?
It's a mixed bag, with some champions getting much-needed love and others being brought down a peg to maintain balance. Evelynn, for instance, is getting some significant buffs to her E Whiplash, making her a more potent assassin.
I can already hear Evelynn players rejoicing. And what about Cassiopeia?
She's receiving some nerfs to her Q and W damage. She's been performing exceptionally well, so this is an attempt to bring her more in line with other mid lane champions.
The constant balancing act, right? Keeping the champions diverse and engaging. while ensuring no one becomes too dominant. What about Swain? He's had a bit of a roller coaster ride in recent patches.
They're giving him back some power by buffing his passive and increasing the AP ratio on his E never move. This makes him less reliant on health items, rewards players who opt for a more ability power-focused build. It acknowledges his versatility as both a tanky frontliner and a potent damage dealer.
It's like they're trying to fine-tune each champion to shine in their own unique way. Speaking of shining, Jax has been a bit of a sleeper pick lately. Are these changes enough to wake him up?
They very well could be. He's getting buffs to his health growth, base mana regeneration, and ultimate damage. These are all-around solid buffs. That should make him more viable throughout the game. He'll be tankier, have fewer mana issues early on, and pack a bigger punch with his ultimate.
But what about Quinn? She's been flying under the radar for a while now.
She's getting a significant buff to the attack speed bonus on her W heightened senses, which could make her basic attacks even more potent. This allows her to shine in a more sustained DPS role, rather than relying solely on burst damage from her abilities.
So we've got some champions on the rise. But who's getting knocked down a peg this time around?
Skarner has been a dominant force in the jungle, so they're reducing his armor growth and increasing the cooldown on his E fracture. This will force him to be more careful with his engagements and make it harder for him to escape quickly after stunning an opponent.
And what about everyone's favorite mischievous Yordle, Teemo?
They're targeting his early game dominance by nuffing the damage on his E, toxic shot at early ranks. This gives his opponents a better chance to survive the laning phase without getting completely poisoned out of the game.
So they're trying to tone down his early game bullying. I'm sure Teemo players will adapt. But it's a step towards a more balanced top lane.
Speaking of a more balanced and positive experience, there's a very interesting new feature in this patch, streamer mode. This replaces account names with champion names throughout the game for the streamer, aiming to reduce stream sniping and harassment.
This is a fantastic initiative. It's great to see Riot taking steps to protect streamers and combat toxicity. It could really improve the overall streaming experience for both the streamers and their viewers. Now, let's dive into the changes to items and runes.
Before we do, I think it's worth noting that these changes to champion bounties and streamer mode really underscore a theme that I'm seeing throughout these patch notes, a focus on fostering a more positive and collaborative gaming environment.
That's a great point. It's not just about balancing champions and items, it's about shaping the overall player experience. It'll be interesting to see how these changes play out in the long run. Now, let's get into those item and rune adjustments. What are we looking at here?
Well, it seems like support players are in for some interesting shifts. When it comes to itemization.
So what's happening with Bloodsong and Zazak's Realm Spike?
It looks like Riot is taking aim at damage-heavy supports with these adjustments. Bloodsong's passive, which increases damage taken by enemies, is being nerfed, especially for melee champions. And Zazak's Realm Spike, known for shredding armor and magic resist, is seeing a reduction in its AP ratio.
So they're encouraging a more traditional support playstyle, focused on protecting carries and setting up plays, rather than bursting down enemies.
That's certainly the direction these changes point to. It could signal a resurgence of tank and enchanter supports, like Leona, Nautilus, and Lulu, whose strengths lie in crowd control and shielding.
That would be a pretty significant shift in the bot lane meta. Could this create more space for ADCs to scale into the late game, if supports are less focused on dealing damage?
It's definitely a possibility. If supports are less of a threat, ADCs might find it easier to farm and survive the laning phase, potentially leading to more late-game focused team compositions. It'll be interesting to see how players adapt their strategies and item builds.
Now let's talk runes. There's some notable changes in this patch, particularly for Domination runes. What's the overarching theme here?
The changes seem to be focused on empowering assassins and refining rune choices for different playstyles. Electrocute and Dark Harvest, popular keystone runes in the Domination tree, are both receiving buffs to their early game damage.
So they're leaning into the high-risk, high-reward nature of these runes.
Exactly. They become even more potent for players who can snowball early, but less impactful if you fall behind. It's a high-stakes gamble that rewards aggressive play and early leads.
What about Hail of Blades? How are those changes going to impact champions who rely on quick bursts of auto attacks?
The changes make it a more specialized rune for melee champions. The attack speed bonus for melee champions is increased significantly, while the bonus for ranged champions remains the same, but with a reduced cooldown.
It seems like they're really trying to fine-tune runes to fit specific champion archetypes, giving each rune a clear purpose. Now let's dive into some of the technical upgrades in this patch. It might not be as glamorous as champion changes, but it's important for the overall health of the game.
Absolutely. Keeping the game running smoothly is crucial. This patch includes some significant updates for macOS and Windows users. macOS players are transitioning from OpenGL to Metal for graphics, while Windows users will see updates to how DirectX 11 is utilized.
What are the main benefits of these changes? Will players notice a difference?
These upgrades primarily focus on maintaining game stability and performance. Metal is a more modern graphics API for macOS, offering better performance and efficiency. The DirectX 11 updates ensure a smoother experience on a wider range of Windows hardware.
But there's a catch, right? Some players might need to upgrade their systems.
Yes. It's important to note that minimum and recommended system requirements have been updated. Players should check the support articles to ensure their hardware can handle the new tech.
It's a small price to pay for a smoother and more stable gaming experience. Now let's circle back to Swiftplay. We talk about the broader changes, but I'm curious about the specific adjustments to champions in this mode.
The champion adjustments for Swiftplay are all about adapting to the faster pace and reducing the pressure around epic monsters. For example, Fiddlesticks, a somewhat niche pick, is getting buffs to his healing and crowd control, potentially making him a more formidable threat.
That makes sense, given the emphasis on quicker matches. How about Ivern? He's a champion who often focuses on supporting and empowering his allies.
Ivern is seeing a buff to the shield strength on his E, Trigger Seed. Many Ivern players have been experimenting with AP builds in Swiftplay, utilizing his shield to protect their team, and this change further supports that playstyle.
It's great to see them adapting champion balance to the unique dynamics of Swiftplay. What about Nidalee? She's been struggling a bit in this faster-paced environment.
They're buffing her health growth and minimum damage on her Q javelin toss. These changes should make her a bit more durable and allow her to contribute more meaningfully to fights, even if she's behind in gold.
So some champions are getting buffs to better fit the Swiftplay meta. But are there any nerfs targeting champions who are a bit too dominant in this mode?
Yorick, known for his relentless split pushing, is seeing a reduction in the damage his ghouls deal to structures. This slows down his ability to demolish towers single-handedly, encouraging more team coordination, in a mode that already favors quick matches.
It's a strategic nerf to prevent him from becoming too oppressive. In a mode where games are naturally shorter, how about Zoe? Has she been performing well in Swiftplay?
She's been underperforming, particularly in lower skill brackets. They're addressing this by buffing her damage and reducing the cooldown on her E Sleepy Trouble bubble. This should give her more opportunities to land her sleep ability and contribute to fights.
So it's not just about nerfing the overperformers, it's also about giving underperforming champions a chance to shine. Now, let's step into the chaotic world of ARAM.
Ah, yes. ARAM, the mode where anything can happen, even in a random setting. There are always champions who rise to the top. Briar, for example, has been a real force in ARAM.
But it seems like her reign of terror might be coming to an end. What nerfs is she facing?
She was just a bit too resilient, making her difficult to take down. To address this, they're reducing her damage taken and healing done, making her a bit more vulnerable, and giving opponents a fairer chance.
So it's a slight power reduction to bring her more in line with other ARAM champions. Are there any champions getting buffs to shake up the ARAM meta?
Zilean is getting some love this patch. They're reducing the cooldowns on his passive, his W, and his E, and they're increasing the healing ratio on his ultimate. These buffs enhance his ability to manipulate time, speed up his allies, and protect them from harm, making him a valuable asset in those chaotic ARAM team fights.
It's a well-deserved boost for a champion who often gets overlooked in other modes. What about Ashe? She's a classic marksman, but how does she fare in the frenzied world of ARAM?
They're adjusting her kit to better suit the ARAM environment. They're reducing the cooldown on her W volley, making it easier for her to harass and control the battlefield with her slows. However, they're also removing the bonus attack speed she received in a previous patch, as it proved a bit too much in RM's fast-paced setting.
So it's a mixed bag for Ashe, but ultimately aimed at making her a more balanced and strategic pick in ARAM. Now, are there any item adjustments specifically for ARAM?
Static Shiv, a popular item for attack speed and area of effect damage, is getting a damage boost to its Electrospark passive against champions. This makes it an even stronger tool for clearing waves and poking enemies in those close quarters air battles.
It sounds like a good buff for those who like to shock and awe their opponents in ARAM. Speaking of shock and awe, let's move on to the most chaotic mode of them all, ARURF. What kind of madness are we in for this time?
Hold on to your hats,
Yeah.
because they're raising the attack speed cap in Air REF to a mind-boggling 10 attacks per second.
10 attacks per second. That's insane. I can already imagine the mayhem. Jinx with fishbones firing like a minigun, Master Yi zipping around like a blur. What are your thoughts on this change?
It's going to be absolute chaos. But that's what ARM is all about, right? To manage this drastic change, they've made a number of champion adjustments. Champions like Garen, Kog'Maw, Kennen, and Renekton, who are expected to thrive in this environment, are receiving nerfs to their damage or damage taken. On the flip side, champions who might struggle, like Yuumi, are getting buffs to help them keep up.
It's a delicate balancing act, trying to amplify the chaos without breaking the mode entirely. I'm also seeing some familiar items making a comeback in ARRF.
That's right. Darkseal, Mejai's Soul Stealer, and Cull are being re-enabled. They were previously disabled due to their snowball potential, but they've been adjusted to mitigate that. Darkseal and Mejai's now grant fewer stacks per kill or assist, and Cull's minion kill threshold has been lowered.
It's a risky move, but adds another layer of strategy and risk-reward to ARRF. Players will need to think carefully about whether the potential benefits outweigh the risks of losing those stacks upon death. Are there any other item adjustments for ARRF?
Heartsteel, an item that grants bonus health and empowers basic attacks, is getting a cooldown reduction. This means players will be able to activate its powerful effect more frequently, leading to even more intense engagements.
So they're leaning into the chaos and amplifying the fun factor of ARRF. It'll be fascinating to see what crazy plays and unexpected outcomes emerge from these changes. What about the Mythic Shop rotation? What new treasures can players look forward to, adding to their collections?
Well, there's a fresh batch of prestige skins arriving, including...
Definitely more.
We've got Mythmaker Cassiopeia, Lunar Beast Fiora, Porcelain Lux, Porcelain Kindred, and even Dragonmancer Reckon.
Those are some big names. I can already picture players scrambling to get their hands on those.
And for those who prefer a bit more edge, there's Dreadnought Darius and Lancer Zero Hecarim making their debut.
I bet those skins are going to be popular. It's always exciting to see new cosmetics drop.
Of course, with new arrivals, we have to say goodbye to some old favorites.
Right, there's always that bittersweet feeling of rotation.
Exactly. This time around, prestige skins for Sivir, Lysandra, Ezreal, Seraphine, and Garen are leaving the shop.
So if you've been eyeing any of those skins, now's the time to grab them before they're gone.
It's not just skins, though.
Oh, right, there are all sorts of goodies in the Mythic Shop.
Chromis, icons, wards. There's a little something for everyone to customize their experience.
I love it. Okay, let's shift gears now. Time to delve into the less glamorous, but equally important, part of the patch notes, bug fixes and quality of life changes.
These updates might not be as flashy, but they're essential for ensuring a smooth and enjoyable gaming experience.
It's like the unsung heroes working behind the scenes.
Precisely. And this patch tackles a wide range of issues, from damage amplification inconsistencies to those pesky pet aggro problems.
Can you give us some specific examples?
Sure. For instance, all sources of damage amplification will now correctly increase all true damage, except for smite and jungle pet damage.
Ah, so those are staying consistent.
Right. Another big change is that pets will no longer draw minion aggro to their owners.
That's a welcome improvement. I can only imagine how frustrating that must have been for champions who rely on their furry companions.
There are also several fixes for specific champion abilities and interactions.
Sounds like they've been busy.
Definitely. For example, Elisa's Spirelings won't grant stacks of Spear of Shojin anymore. And we'll see the cosmetic crit icon used for Varus's QW combo, and Aatrox's Sweet Spot Q.
It's all about those little details.
And let's not forget about Nico. She'll now take current health damage from minions, based on the minion she's disguised as, not her own current health.
Makes sense. That should make her disguises more effective.
There are also fixes for runes, items, and game mechanics. Axiom Arc, for instance, won't be causing unintended damage boosts under certain circumstances.
Good to know.
And thankfully, players won't be able to snag 2 flashes using Unsealed Spellbook anymore.
Oh, that's gotta hurt for some players.
But it keeps things fair.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Any other notable bug fixes?
They've addressed issues with epic monsters, like Atacon's Revival and Rift Herald's charge damage in Swiftplay, as well as several visual and audio bugs.
So they've really covered a lot of ground with these bug fixes and quality of life improvements.
It shows a real commitment to creating a polished and enjoyable experience for all players.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into League of Legends patch 2025.S1.3. From the attack speed cap increase and champion bounty adjustments, to the epic monster shakeups, Swiftplay updates, and RM and RF tweaks. This patch has something for everyone.
We've explored the philosophy behind these changes, their potential impact on the meta, and what it all means for you, the players.
We also highlighted some of the more intriguing details tucked away in the patch notes.
But now we want to hear from you. What excites you most about these changes?
What strategies are you brainstorming?
Are you eager to test out the new attack speed cap?
Or perhaps you're intrigued by the champion bounty adjustments and their impact on team dynamics.
Share your thoughts and predictions with us.
We love hearing your perspectives on the ever-evolving world of League of Legends.
Remember, these patch notes are just the beginning.
There's always more to discover, more to analyze, and more to master.
So dive deep into the patch notes, experiment with different champions and builds, and most importantly, have fun on the Rift.
Until next time, Summoners, may your games be filled with epic plays, strategic brilliance, and unforgettable moments.
And may your deep dives into the world of League of Legends be as rewarding as ever.